It's been 20 years since Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, and the wounds are still fresh for those that witnessed that destruction close up. Katrina is the deadliest hurricane in United States history, and it's linked to nearly 1,400 deaths by itself and over $201 billion in damage. You believe that? The storm changed the Gulf Coast, with neighboring states like Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi still impacted. And you can see what it looks like right there from New Orleans. Fox Weather Correspondent Robert Ray joins us right now. Robert, you did cover the storm back in 2005. We're coming up on that 20-year mark. You weren't working with Fox Weather. We weren't around, but you were out there for sure.
Yes, I was. It was a period that I'll never forget. Obviously, everyone who was involved in coverage of Hurricane Katrina and those that lived on the Gulf Coast at the time. I was working for HD News at the time, which in 2005 was the first national and international high-definition news network in the world, and got to do a lot of great things with that network. And one of the coverage decisions that obviously we made was to cover Katrina full force. And myself, at the time, I was a photographer and a producer, was not on TV. So that was my background for many years before I turned to this side of the camera. And I still shoot, obviously, but that was my role. And we started off, Bob and everybody, on the Florida Panhandle, not far from the Alabama border, because the track initially was supposed to come in closer to the Panhandle. And what we did is, we followed the storm as it came in from Florida, went through Mobile, Alabama, and eventually into the hellscape of storm surge on the Mississippi coast, which we retreated about 2-3 miles inland because of how intense all of that surge was. And then after that, after a day of coverage, after it came in and seeing all the hell on the ground on the Mississippi coast, then we moved into New Orleans as the levees broke. But Bob, the thing is about Katrina, the swath of disaster. When we hear Katrina, we think about New Orleans, obviously. But Mississippi was hurt so badly, and I'll never forget walking through debris fields on the coastline, Biloxi and Gulfport, and shooting all of the debris, and then coming across, unfortunately, sea life that had been pushed out of an aquarium there, and this giant walrus that was bloated and dead, and all of these birds eating it, and just the odors, and then obviously the people there that were displaced and folks that lost their lives from the storm surge. And then, obviously we made our way into New Orleans. You couldn't cross Lake Pontchartrain because the bridges partially collapsed. And so you had to go up through Baton Rouge and then back down into the city. And, very quickly it became inundated, 90% of the city, I believe, with water. And, I spent the first week there camped out in my work vehicle, sleeping in it and going and covering all of what was going on as the water just took over New Orleans, and people were stranded at the convention center and inside the Superdome there, and just seeing the faces and the eyes of children and mothers, fathers, elderly, and people who were dead floating in the waters. It was just a very traumatic scenario, and I say this to everybody. It changed the course of my career from a journalism perspective, in the way I cover things, the way I try to immerse myself into stories. It made me realize that there is nothing perfect in this world, whether it be your elected officials and government, whether it be your city, whether it be the way people respond to one another in traumatic times. Nothing is what it seems often, and you always have to be prepared and always lend that helping hand to anyone in peril. That is some of the lessons Katrina taught me. It'll never leave me. I was on the ground for well over a month during that period, and it is a storm that changed not only New Orleans forever, but so many parts of the Gulf Coast, from the Panhandle all the way across Alabama, the small pocket of Mobile there, and Mississippi, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember being a meteorologist at a different network at the time and seeing the satellite imagery, Robert, the day before it came in, and the outflow clouds extended from the Florida Panhandle all the way out to freaking Texas. And you can see the satellite imagery right here. You see what I'm talking about. Watch this thing grow in intensity. All of a sudden, the eye develops right about there, and you can see as it continues to spin. I mean, look at the clouds. It was huge. The pit in my stomach was huge. The day before it hit, Robert, what were you thinking?
Well, I have to tell you, I was very afraid because at that point in my career, I really had only had one season of hurricanes under my belt. And by the way, 2004 was a massive season with Hurricane Charlie and others. And, I was covering those as well. But I was very afraid and really, I don't think understood the magnitude of what was happening until we got into Mississippi and realized that that storm surge was coming in well over a mile from the Gulf of Mexico at the time. And then, not really having a full understanding of the way the levee systems worked in New Orleans. I was trying to wrap my head around, okay, I don't understand how this city is underwater at this point. And, then having a full understanding of the fact that New Orleans was surrounded by water, under sea level, most of it, essentially a bowl. And then getting into New Orleans and seeing what was going on at the convention center and the Superdome, and the fact that so many people were stranded in the neighborhoods because of the inundation of water. It was overwhelming and traumatic, to say the least. The emotions were so intense, and the physical aspect of that, like everyone else there who was going through it, whether they're residents or media or then, first responders, the fatigue and the heat and the odors and just everything surrounding you, you almost felt like there was no way out. When was it going to end? And it took a lot of time to end. And then the realization at that time that maybe New Orleans would never see the light of day again after this. Maybe civilization would not exist there on the mighty Mississippi, that the city was ruined forever. I really did believe that. And it is amazing that they made such a comeback. And the people that live there now, Bob, look, they'll tell you, the city has changed. It is not what New Orleans was before Hurricane Katrina. Some of the traditions and some of the culture have left. But the overall sense in New Orleans is that they are still alive and they are still fighting, and they know that this is not the end, that perhaps they will see another storm like this, and they just hope that the levees hold up. I mean, we saw that during Hurricane Ida in 2021. The levees did hold up, certainly, and that is an excellent thing. But we'll be looking back at all of this at a 2-hour special that begins on August 24th on Fox Weather. Brian Norcross and I and a great team were out shooting many different segments over the past few months, and I think people really should tune in and get that perspective, and especially from the Fox News journalists that were on the ground back in 2005. So many of them that were down there, and just it was a life-altering, life-changing scenario for everyone involved, and gosh, certainly the residents of New Orleans.
Yeah, Robert, you did terrific work down there then. You're still doing it right now, and I share your sentiment. I didn't think New Orleans was going to come back. I live in Atlanta, and I saw over the weeks and months after that so many Louisiana license plates in Atlanta. I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, these poor people. They're just, now they're in Atlanta. They're like, forget it, I'm not going back. But it did come back, and it came back big time, which is great. Robert Ray, great to talk to you, my friend. And I can't wait to see that special. That's on August 24th. Thank you, Robert. Katrina's Wrath premieres 8:30 p.m. on Monday, the 24th.